Hello again, friends, and good morning, and you are our friends. And welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru right here, wherever it is that you've downloaded it from, wherever it is that you're streaming it from, wherever it is that you're watching a YouTube video from, right here on the Jim Cornette Network. I am your host, the great Brian Last, and I'm very happy to present to you right now the quietest man in professional wrestling, the man who will be answering your questions that are sent in numerous ways, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Sooner or later, even a blind squirrel will find a nut, my boy, and you have just gotten a nut here, right here at the top of the program. That was a not only serviceable but praiseworthy introduction to this broadcast, for once in a long while.
It's your blind squirrel. I'll just hold the head.
Well, oh, see, now you got to crack me up right at the top of the program. But it was a very apt description and introduction to what we do here, along with some tomfoolery, which will come shortly, I'm sure, as we get into Tom and the rest of his foolery. But I was sitting here crossing my fingers, Brian, because you know how nervous I get on this internet stuff. I never know when I'm going to break the internet. Well, I'm so popular now. You talked about the Jim Cornette Network. Which network? I'm on every goddamn network.
Everywhere. Well, it's kind of like how Boyd Pierce used to say, we'll be right back with this on the Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. What network? It's on whatever channel it's on.
They did have a network, actually, a network of stations. In that it was proper usage, a syndicated network of stations. So, but anyway, I'm not even syndicated. I'm on the internet. I'm on broadcast. I'm on podcast.
You're in the air.
I'm in the air. I'm a spore that you people are breathing in, and sooner or later the cult of Cornette will come to fruition. But anyway, I'm crossing my fingers back here over this internet thing because we revealed the big news, the big scoop, the big reveal last week on The Experience that the final batch in existence, and I've looked, of Midnight Express scrapbooks have been uncovered in Stan Lane's mother's closet due to her recent move. And thanks to everybody who tweeted and said, get well and feel better soon, Mama Lane. She had the fall, but she's doing much better. But she did move and provide a service to all of us in that there was those boxes of Midnight Express scrapbooks from 10 years ago in Mama Lane's closet. And we have announced also that we are doing something very special with the last remaining books. And it is, since we are pre-taping this program, they're supposed to be on sale when you go to jimcornette.com on Monday, May the 6th, and you click on collectibles, and you go to the store, as they call it in the website world, and there, lo and behold, under books will be the Midnight Express scrapbook. That's what we're hoping for. I've been told it's no problem, but I'm not pushing these buttons. But at any rate, when you click on that Midnight Express scrapbook, you will see the entire Ultimate Midnight Express 35th Anniversary Experience package. Would you like me to elaborate, Brian?
I would love for you to elaborate.
Well, I shall elaborate then. Because this book, and the last time we found the boxes from Dennis Condrey's closet after he'd been incommunicado due to his health issues. And we thought we don't want to rape the people, but we put them up because they're collector's items now, and they're going for $300 now on eBay or whatever the fuck. So we put the I believe 40 up for $150 a piece and sold out in 3 hours. So we don't want to gouge people, but this is a hot item. I create collector's items. So what we have done is we've made the Ultimate Midnight Express fan collector's item. It's a package, if you will, in honor of our 35th anniversary, and 50 of these exist in the world. And when they're gone, they're gone. I don't know how long that'll take, but I assure you, we can't do this again. You get an uncirculated copy of the Midnight Express scrapbook, straight out of the cellophane, autographed by all 4 members of the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Stan Lane, and myself, personalized to you. You get a limited edition re-release. It's only available in this package. We're not going to sell it individually, of the 2-disc, 4-hour DVD Wrestling Rarities, the Midnight Express, that's been out of print for several years now. which comes complete with a 12-page collector's booklet with pictures and contains the only 80s NWA World Tag Team Championship matches on tape in existence that Vince McMahon doesn't own, including some shot by a friend of mine, and they look nice. You get the personalized, autographed, color 8x10, 25th anniversary reunion photo, autographed by all 4 members of the Midnight Express. You get a personally autographed photo of each version of the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, and Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane. I'm in both. You get a handwritten letter of authenticity from me, certifying the autographs and including the number of your package from 1 to 50. And from each purchase will go a $25 donation to the American Cancer Society in honor of Dennis Condrey's winning fight. And as I mentioned on Thursday, all 4 members of the Midnight Express will share equally in the proceeds of these packages. So, as Dennis mentioned on the NWA pay-per-view, he's got 6 doctors to support. So he'd like to thank you in advance for your support. This is the Ultimate Midnight Express collectible, and there are 50. And they are $449.95, which, when you think about it, is probably what the book's going to be going for in another 6 months.
Yeah.
So get them while they're hot, folks. And also, you can get the Midnight Express reunion photo autographed and the Eaton and Lane version photo autographed individually, if you like, under the photo section.
Well, hold on now, because I know people that collect autographs, whether it's in sports or entertainment or even wrestling.
Yes.
And I know a big deal, because there are so many frauds and fakes and phonies out there, is a certificate of authenticity, and you haven't said anything about that. And for all we know, because you have great
I did. No, I did. No, wait a minute. I did say that there was a certificate of authenticity in the Midnight Express package from me, clearly stating that it was one of these 50 packages.
But that doesn't state that the autographs are authentic. You could be faking Dennis Condrey's autograph in your office there.
I would never do that.
Prove it.
I would never do that. I just saw these gentlemen in person. I'll tell you how I can prove it. I can prove it by making a challenge. If anyone, because I'll tell you a little secret. Starbaker Bolin at one point was selling pictures around the Louisville area. This was years ago, of WWE superstars autographed. And he would stand there and look at you square in the eye and say, yes, these were autographed by WWE superstars. They were spread out. He didn't mention which WWE. There was one WWE superstar that used to live in his house that was very good at imitating other WWE superstars' signatures and maybe a little more well-known than him. So it was signed by a WWE superstar, but not the particular WWE superstar that was on the photo. But these are legitimate, and I will issue this challenge. If I ever send out an autograph from JimCornette.com that in any way looks shady, I urge you to retain the law offices of Stephen P. New, trademark, in order to potentially take me to court and prove me wrong, because if Stephen P. New cannot win a case, it cannot be won, ladies and gentlemen. If Stephen P. New cannot get a verdict, it cannot be verdicated, ladies and gentlemen. If Stephen P. New cannot get you paid up the ass, then your ass will not accept cash, ladies and gentlemen, because he is one of us and he's on your side. And the law offices of Stephen P. New, by the way, did I mention that number? 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com. We are not only behind him in his fight against the big pharmaceutical companies and the big oil companies and the money that he's getting for the opioid addicted children that are born that way because of especially in his home state of West Virginia, the push by these big pharmaceutical companies to push these drugs down our throats and endanger our lives or poison our atmosphere or any of the things that these big companies do. In addition to that, Brian Last and I are personally delivering some of our legal business to Stephen P. New over a project that we cannot name now for a purpose that we cannot talk about. But if we will give a man our personal business, we would not. As a matter of fact, that's why, once again, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't want to start any fights with this with any other podcasters, but that's why that we do not promote dick pills here on the program, because we only promote and advertise and publicize and ballyhoo the products and services and people that we enjoy and that we think that our like-minded listeners will enjoy. We don't just whore ourselves out for any old purpose, and neither does Stephen P. New. He's the most virginal attorney that you would care to meet, and that he only accepts cases that he believes in. He's not one of these morally bankrupt snakes that go plastering themselves all over the television. If you've been hurt, call me. And if you haven't been hurt, call me and I'll punch you and then sue somebody else for it. Stephen P. New is honest. He has integrity. If you've been wronged, he will make it right again. Have I summed up our relationship with Stephen P. New here as succinctly as possible, Brian?
I think so. We certainly believe in him, and we certainly encourage all the Cult of Cornette members. If you have any issues whatsoever with Big Pharma or anyone else, call Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. But I have to go back to something you said
now,
before.
wait, but don't just say if you have issues with anyone else. If you have an issue with your mother-in-law, I'd prefer you keep that between yourself and the family. But if you have an issue with someone that requires legal recourse, then the course for you to take, of course, and a course is a course, of course, Stephen P. New. What were you about to say?
What did you say before? If he doesn't get you an ass load of cash, your ass doesn't accept cash.
Well, I'm telling you, if anybody in the world can fill your ass up with cash, it's Stephen P. New. If he can't do it, it can't be done. I think your ass is cashless.
All right. Well,
but anyway, speaking of cash, if you've got the cash to purchase these items, JimCornette.com, as you hear them today, Monday, May the 6th, they're supposed to be available. And I hope that is the case. And as I mentioned, you can get the individual Midnight Express pictures. There's still a $5 donation off each of those for the American Cancer Society. And oh, heavens to mercy. I guess now we got to do a program, right?
Now we have questions that you will be answering, sent in by the Cult of Cornette. And actually, the first one is, despite the fact that the John Oliver segment aired, I think about a month ago now, we're still getting questions about it, Jim. A lot of them have already been answered by you on the air, but one that several people have sent in that I want to get your thoughts on is whether you, Jim Cornette, working for the WWE, were an independent contractor or an employee.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just did my Fighting Spirit magazine column for this coming issue that has not been released yet because obviously I just did the column on the whole John Oliver piece and independent contractors and employees and what the WWE covers and doesn't cover and should cover and that whole, and it's a very lengthy piece, so I will not go into most of it here, but check out Fighting Spirit magazine when it comes out very shortly. But I was an employee. Actually, do you know the sum total of time in my 37-year professional career that I have been the employee of a pro wrestling promotion?
You know, that's a really interesting question because you weren't an employee in Memphis, technically, when you were a photographer. You were independent. You weren't an employee of Mid-South or World Class or Crockett. Although Crockett had you on the contract, it was a wrestler's contract, independent contractor. Smoky Mountain.
All right, smarty pants. I know you don't have to go through my whole resume, but the sum total, 2 weeks.
Come on.
2 weeks. Here's the thing. As you mentioned, we were under wrestlers' contracts for Crockett, which was the first contracts that we signed. And then when TBS bought the company, we signed other wrestler contracts with TBS. In those days, when one of the talents did announcing, it was just like, hey, Cornette, you're going to do color on this show. Oh, cool. I get to say more of my shit. You know, whatever the fuck. It was never any thought of paying anybody any more money. But then finally with WCW, that's one of the reasons why Herd kept offering me more. They were so television centric that they were paying the announcers in some cases more than the talent, which was insane in a lot of those cases. But that's why Herd would keep offering me more money than the Midnight Express. Well, you're doing the color and the 900 number and stuff. But it was still a talent contract. You were never an employee. When they put me on the booking committee, they added, you know how much I got for being on the WCW booking committee in 1989?
So this would have been on top of your contract that you signed
on top of
year.
my, yes, which was $150,000 a year. I've mentioned that.
No, I don't know.
$300 a week. They gave you an extra $300 a week to be on the booking committee. And that was basically, it wasn't worth sitting there looking at Herd that, you know, in the meetings, the booking meetings where we didn't do any booking. But anyway, so there was that. Then yes, Smoky Mountain. I'm not an employee. I'm the fucking one horse or one man band or whatever. The one horse race, as it may be. Then I start working part time for the WWF. Same thing as a talent. But then finally, I'm supposed to go in February of '96 to start up there in the office. I'm still managing on camera, but I'm also on the creative team, right? So, and I've come to find out this is how they kind of protected the independent contractor thing, because there was things that an employee couldn't do. They had to be a talent, or a talent couldn't do, had to be whatever the fuck, right? So I just started on the creative team and got a salary for that. And I was still a talent and would get paid for managing on the pay-per-view or the TV or whatever the fuck, right? But then at the end of '96, that's when The Undertaker gave me the tombstone, and they ribbed me and zipped me up in the fucking body bag because they were writing me off television because it was too much. I'm on the creative team. I'm an agent at television. I'm doing announcing because I'm there in Stamford and can go in and do Superstars voiceovers with JR or do International Heat or whatever. I'm also working in the office because by then I was calling the job guys for television, and that's not a derisive term. That's what there's honor in being a job guy. They were the guys being called to do jobs for our stars on TV, and they were happy to be there and get the call because maybe they could move up. So if you say, that fucking Brian Lass, he's a fucking job guy, that's a knock. But I would call and get the job guys for TV because I kept a list of all of them in the geographic regions. And I was starting to work with the third-party bookings for guys that weren't booked a lot, would get them booked out to the independent promoters. So I was talking to them all the time. So they wrote me off television. Then when my deal came up, Ed Kaufman, who's one of the legal head honchos, it comes to me and they say, well, now that you're not on camera as a talent and taking bumps, as I would find out in a minute, and all this stuff, we're going to make you an employee. And this way you get the insurance, you get the benefits and everything. Oh, because even then insurance was fucking expensive, right? But so they go through all this paperwork and all this mumbo jumbo and this fucking meeting or two meetings or whatever, where now they've made me an employee and they're going to take taxes out, which is great because independent contractors, which wrestlers all are, as we've established, have to pay estimates 4 times a year. April 15, June 15, September 15, January 15. I can do that off the top of my head. And you estimate your year's income and what your tax you're going to have to pay. And of course, that's where guys get in a fucking problem all the time, because who knows when you're going to have, as a wrestler, you didn't used to know whether you're going to have a $50,000 a year or $150,000 a year till it fucking happened. So anyway, and then you pay the balance if you owe, which usually there is some on April 15th. Well, now they're going to start withholding the taxes. Well, pay it now, pay it later, whatever the fuck, right? That's fine with me. And I'm going to get this insurance where I can go to the doctor and not have to write this big check every fucking month. And then they made me an employee, and it was a 2-week pay cycle. And I got one of these fucking checks where I was like, oh, shit, they took a lot of taxes out. But anyway, I get one check, right? Then we go to a Monday Night Raw. And something happens technically. This is back when it was tape, where they told me, go out and kill some fucking time. Cut this promo in the ring. Babyface will come out. Y'all do some fucking business. I can't remember what it was. It was typical shit we did all the time. Kill some time for the live crowd because we can't send the next tape match out. We've got to flummox. So I go out there and did it and ended up taking a bumper out of the ring or whatever the fuck. And I come, and the next fucking time I'm in the office, whenever a day or two later, Ed Kaufman sees me in the hall. Oh, Jim, we can't have employees taking bumps. What are you talking about? Well, you did it. Well, yeah, it wasn't on TV, but I'm going to do that from time to time. Oh, we can't do that. An employee can't take bumps because then apparently that would fucking, and I know they must have relaxed this later on, but at the time, Ed Kaufman, because they were relaxing a lot of their shit around there, and the legal people and the TV standards people are all up in fucking panties in a bunch. But somehow, if an employee took bumps, it made him too close to an independent contractor, and the independent contractor said, well, he's doing the same thing I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. So I said, look, I didn't say I was going to give up my entire active fucking career stuff like this may come up or whatever the fuck. I don't want to turn down the opportunity to, if there was somebody I wanted to manage on TV, or if they, want me to do something, or I like, so they unmade me an employee and put me back on the goddamn. And what they did was then they boned it, because they'd already promised me this fucking insurance, right? And now I'm getting hot. So they bonused me whatever the annual premium was for the fucking health insurance and whatever other insurance was in the package that I got. And I just bought it myself. So at least I got that out of it. But I was an employee for 2 weeks. And at one point in WCW, I think they started making in the early 90s, they started making some of the employers, some of the announcers employees, which is why some ex-in-ring talent always wanted to transition to being announcers, because you only had to work a day or two a week there for them and, get a shit ton full of money and benefits, whatever the fuck is what I've been told. But anyway, yeah, 2 weeks. And then everything else has been independent contractor. But then in Ring of Honor, when Sinclair bought the company, they were going to make me and the Delirious and Gary Juster and the weasels that worked in the office that ended up stealing from them and et cetera, employees of Ring of Honor. Right. So once again, they're dangling the insurance. Well, now this fucking insurance, I'm paying a fortune for this fucking insurance. Right. So I'm interested, and I don't intend to take any bumps at this point. I can still be on camera, whatever. So anyway, I was sold on that idea until they had the orientation where they sent this woman from Human Resources to sit us all down in the room. I felt like I'd gone into like a fucking intervention or what, he was drunk driving meetings where we're all sitting around in a circle and there's one person that's tasked with lecturing us. And this went on for an hour and a half where they went through the manual and the stuff that was required of employees. And it turns out you still pay, not a lot, but you pay with some nominal fee, like, $100, $200 a month or whatever for the insurance. But also, here's how you check. You have to watch this video orientation and online and this sexual harassment thing and do this quiz. And a lot of this stuff was online. Report your hours that you have worked on to the online program and your check will be blah, blah, blah. And there was a phone book sized thing. I think I've still got it around here somewhere, of regulations about how you were to conduct yourself, what you could do and couldn't do, and things that were allowed and weren't allowed. And if you want to take a vacation, you have to approve this or whatever. So I'm thinking these 3-day periods when I drop out of life so I don't choke anybody apparently are highly frowned upon in this environment, right? They want to know where you are and shit. And all this stuff. And one of it was, you can't speak to anybody with abusive language. I'm like, that's my whole fucking gimmick, right? And this is a wrestling locker room. And so after I got this hour and a half orientation, all these things that I'd have to learn how to do just to fucking check in to get my check and fill this form out. And at such and such time, you're fully vested in this insurance unless we determine that shit can go sideways in a double quick hurry, in which case we refer to clause C. I called Joe Koff. I said, look here, just keep me as an independent contractor, because it's like the sword of Damocles hanging over my head with this fucking much of a conduct manual and all this. This sounds complicated. I'm just going to stick to being the fucking guy that you call in when you need your gutters done over here, and I'll just produce your show for you. And that's the way we left it. But 2 weeks as an employee of a wrestling promotion in 37 years, while otherwise being gainfully and sometimes overemployed in that time period at the same time. But here's the thing. Let me say this. My column and I fully come out in favor of WWE making the talent employees, or if not, just once again, if not calling the table, calling it a lamp, but treating it like a table, do the same things for them even if they're not called that, because the WWE can get around shit and do anything. And a big company can do anything they want, ultimately, pretty much, especially if nobody's complaining about it on the other end. I don't think any of the fucking boys, if they got health insurance and they got their road expenses paid, would then call the IRS and complain about it. But they still say, I'm not an employee. They're just paying for all my shit. And, you know, they can do anything they want, and they ought to treat the boys better. And they're the one promotion that can. So I make that point in my column. But in some cases, for me, you know, the independent contractor thing has worked just fine because I always have a variety of things going on, and don't, at this stage of the game especially, don't want to be tied down to one specific thing. Because then I have more options, and I like to do things that I like to do that come up as they are repeatedly here lately. But you know, if you're younger and you're just looking at wrestling, that's your career, instead of wanting to be a producer or an agent or a matchmaker or a promoter or a trainer or announcer or whatever the fuck, the independent contractor thing fucks you in a lot of cases in wrestling. So it can work for some people, but it's probably not best for a guy that's just in the middle of his wrestling career and looking at doing that for a number of years more.
All right, well, let's get some more questions here on the show, Jim.
So in other words, shut up about this already.
No, I didn't say that. It
just, some people don't understand how the wrestling business works.
A lot of people in the wrestling.
A lot of people in the, yeah, oh, you beat me to it, you son of a bitch.
Well, here's the next question, Jim. This one was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Stuart. And by the way, if you tweet me and say, hey, how do I send in a question for the drive-thru? Start by listening to the drive-thru.
No, what?
Do you see that when they do that?
Yes. Well, and I get questions to my email address, which I won't give out here because I'm so far behind, folks. How do I submit a question to the drive-thru? Well, if you've got this far, you should have just asked a fucking question. But we say this every week on the program here. How do they submit the questions?
We say it before every single question. There's two ways. You can send it in via email, CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, or on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. And this one was sent in by Stuart via email. You mentioned on episode 86 that you once witnessed approximately 7 particular felonies of a sexual nature happen one night in Spartanburg with just popcorn on your lap. My question is, whatever happened to Popcorn? Do you know her real name? Do you know where she might be dancing now? My friends over in Cowpens are inquiring, as they are in desperate need of entertainment.
Cowpen, South Carolina, which was very near not only where this incident took place, but then also the young lady in question with the number of large gentlemen in a van then had no way home. So these gentlemen inquired, well, can we take you home? And because we don't want you to be on our hands too much longer. And we don't want to leave you out here in the middle of the dark. So, oh, yes, just go this way. And these gentlemen then get off in this van, get off the goddamn interstate and go down this back road in South Carolina. And then we were in the trees, and suddenly, just on a 2-lane road, I say these gentlemen were on a 2-lane road, and suddenly there's a mailbox on a post with a little driveway. And this girl, from what I've heard, said, stop here, and got out and just walked down I don't know where the fuck these folks were that I'm talking about, that I was obviously not in the company of at the time. And it was I don't know where that person that I've heard tell of and haven't actually met would be now today, but Cowpens would probably be very close.
All right, our next question, Jim, was sent in.
She would probably still look like Anna Nicole Smith.
That's what she looked like.
That's what I've heard.
Our next question, Jim, was
I need to call Stephen T. New.
We're getting close. We're getting close to that point. Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Steve Antoniak in Greensburg, PA. I just finished listening to the most recent episode of the Jim Cornette Experience, and you mentioned something that jogged my memory back to the days of Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA. I remember a moment when the U.S. champion at the time, Magnum TA, was reprimanded by NWA President Bob Geigel for conduct unbecoming a champion, and a stern reprimand was being issued. If I'm not mistaken, Magnum's response was simply, well, reprimand this, followed by an uppercut to Bob Geigel's glass jaw, whereupon he dropped to the floor like a sack of hammers. As a 12-year-old at the time, I found a new respect for Magnum TA because he stood up for his mother instead of the championship that he respected so much, since it was Nikita and Ivan who baited him into a fight during the contract signing weeks earlier by insulting his mother, who was there at the time.
Yes.
As I spend my time nowadays taking care of my invalid mother, the moment resonates with me even more today, although in a much different way. My question is, Jim, why does no one stand up to authority figures anymore in the WWE?
And by the way, Steve, hello, and it's good to hear from you again. And Steve is a longtime member of the cult. That's a great question. It's got an easy answer, but that they don't want them to, apparently, or elsewise they would be. But it's nobody doesn't understand this, that the whole idea behind Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon was that Austin eventually got the upper hand on the boss in every conflict. Eventually, he got some pebbles thrown in his path and some stumbling blocks and etc. But eventually he got the upper hand. And the same thing with Magnum. And here was the thing, Bob Geigel. Even at the time, I didn't realize who Bob Geigel had been. I was just looking at who he was. But Bob Geigel was kind of a fumble fuck on the promos. Bob had been a big time shooter. I mean, at a high national level back in late 40s. And he had been a top pro and considered a big deal in the 50s. But he had fallen out of national prominence because he ended up one of the owners in St. Louis and Kansas City in the Central States promotions, and a partner in St. Louis and with Sam Muchnick. And so for the folks there, he was still a big deal, but now he's on national TV, and he just he looked like Fred Mertz at that point in time, and I mean, it used to also be a deal that I think they got him to dress up once or twice, but Bob Geigel's a guy that fucking comes down in shorts and flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt to the casino in Las Vegas, and just kind of looks like here's the NWA president. He looks like a fucking beach bum. But anyway, when Magnum punched him, he was presented because he was the president of the NWA, and Magnum, like any fucking Rambo or any tough, Bruce Willis, any tough, ultimate hero, he may have a little rough around the edges, but he's ultimately the good guy. He has fought these fucking dirty Russians on behalf of his mother's good name, and now the fucking this, bald-headed, jug-faced fuck is going to get up in his face and reprimand him. So boom, Dusty knew that's going to get Magnum TA over. And it obviously did, because there's a 12-year-old kid named Steve Antoniak loving it in Pennsylvania. So yes, the whole idea of wrestlers listening to the authority figure, when Bullet Bob Armstrong, obviously, the baby faces listened to him and respected him because it's Bullet Bob in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And the heels, specifically me and my guys, because that's where the money was in our rivalry, disrespected him, but ultimately he got the final word, because you put the authority figure over if he's a baby face, and you put the baby face over the authority if the authority is a heel, because ultimately your hero is what sets the tone for your whole fucking universe. So when guys are dressed down by the authority figure and have no comeback, if they're in the right, then they become emasculated and meaningless, and people don't believe in them. Imagine if Stephanie McMahon had told Steve Austin to go piss up a rope and he'd let her do it and never had a comeback. On the other hand, if you have Bullet Bob Armstrong as a babyface authority figure and the heels just run around and do what they want and don't listen to him, and he can't beat anybody up, then he becomes an idiot, and there's no reason for him to be there. It's all about presenting, if you're going to present your authority figures as heels, ultimately the baby, and Steve Austin taught him this, ultimately the baby face has to go over. And in this case, to have Stephanie McMahon threatening guys with their jobs, here's another thing I don't understand. They pay these guys so poorly, or they're all so bad with their money, that if they're on national TV and headlining around the world these big major events, but if they get fired, they're going 2 weeks later they're on the soup line. How does that work? They fired me once and I still haven't lost everything I had then, and that's been years. So I don't get it. Why do they make it? It's a crutch of bad writers to make these storylines that don't make sense, obviously, that just make your heroes and your stars look less than they are. We want to think as fans that the wrestlers have more money than we do and don't have to worry about shit like that. Except once again, if it's a sympathetic case, like the Junkyard Dog has been blinded and now he has no career and he can't, his daughter's about to be born and he'll never see her. How is he going to provide for her future? Because at the time, the dog was also only 30 years old. We had an athlete struck down in the prime of his life. It's permanent, not just, well, we fired him, so he'll go get a job wrestling somewhere else. That's just weak, inefficient storytelling and just coming up with a, hey, what if, like we're doing a fucking episode of Green Acres this week. What if fucking Ebb decides to get married? Well, we don't have a girlfriend for him. Well, let's find one in a fucking haystack. She just pops up there. It actually worked on Green Acres, but it doesn't on Monday Night Raw.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from JT. What are your takes on the Lio Rush heat and his response to it?
You know, I have to admit, first of all, in the interest of full disclosure, that I have not been interested enough, frankly, to go in and read every single quote and et cetera that has been publicized about this from all sides. I read what Mark Henry said to him, which sounded like good advice, which apparently he didn't fucking get. I've also read that he's whining and crying poverty, but then somebody, and you can tell me if this is true or if neither one of us know, then we don't know, but did somebody say he's making $300,000 a year?
I have not heard that. I haven't heard one way or another how much he's making.
Okay, if it's 100, the point is crying poverty. Once again, my asshole bleeds for you, Leo. I went $550 in a fucking hole one night, make one shot in Tupelo. I didn't get paid because they didn't put me on the fucking sheet, and I wrecked my car on the way back to Memphis. So I'm sorry of your hardship, that you're having to pay your road expenses at this level of your career while you're working for the WWE. And if you're not making as much money as some people in your position, maybe it's because you keep running your dick licker all the time. And all the boys are always mad at you. And the office apparently thinks you're a pain in the ass. And when Mark Henry, of all people, who debuted in the WWF and had tons of heat in the locker room because he didn't know how to act. And you know what he did? He manned up and learned how to work and learned how to act. And 3 years later is still a respected member of the locker room whenever he wants to be, gave you some advice and you say, but yeah.
Two of his other complaints, I'd like to get your thoughts on these. One was that he hasn't been getting paid for merchandise that uses his catchphrase. I guess he chants Lashley in a unique way and they put that on his shirt. He doesn't get any of that income. That's one.
Wait a minute. What the fuck? His catchphrase can't be another guy's fucking name. If it was Mama Says It Bees that way sometimes over a picture of Lashley, he might have a guy. Just because he says it in a particular way, it's the fucking guy's name. This little fucking punk, from the start, all we've heard about him is he's the guy that fucking takes a power bomb off a fucking ladder and through a table and pops up and doesn't sell it because it's his last night in the promotion. He's always bringing his family around, show off what a big star he is, apparently. And he's always talking about what a big star he needs to be. And he gets fucking tossed out of locker rooms. And he gets heat with the other fucking boys. And veterans try to tell him what the fuck's up, and he don't listen to them. And he tried to make it racial because he was supposed to be the young boy on the fucking European tour and carry the fucking cooler or whatever. But he didn't want to be treated like a shoeshine boy in front of all his fans in Europe, when the black and white and yellow and green wrestlers all do it, because it's not about race, it's about respect, and it's something that everybody does. Unless it's everybody gets sodomized with a rusty fishing knife on their first European tour, if you want to fit in the locker room, then you just do shit. Or if you're a fucking rookie, first-time fucking young guy who's already had some heat to begin with, you just do shit. Nobody asked him to drop his pants and get a fucking railroad spike shoved up his ass in a town square. You can just tell he's fascinated by himself, which is why I said that he'd be $1 million talent. Because if I want to fucking smack him, same thing that Bill Watts said about me the first time he saw me, he wanted to fucking slap me. You can tell it would be his $1 million spot, as an annoying, obnoxious, little motor-mouthed, loud-mouthed, fucking weaselly manager that can do all the shit, but for real, in real life, but is portrayed as completely physically ineffective, and he's good enough worker to do that. If he was smart enough worker to do it, he wants to do this shit and be a fucking star. The only way he's ever going to make any money is if he works as a complete fucking flunky, and they gear his paydays and his payoffs off of people paying or tuning in or otherwise investing and seeing him get his fucking ass kicked. He needs to, that's the personality that he should be in wrestling. If he wants to be a big babyface fucking hero, big time wrestler and do all these moves and work competitively with main event stars on television, I don't know how else that anybody should be able to present it to this guy. He apparently, and I've never met him, but you see all of these comments from all these people. He needs to get his shit straight and be a flunky in the locker room and act like a flunky to make a lot of money, an obnoxious, annoying flunky on television, or he needs to go work for fucking Poughkeepsie Wrestling where he can do all his bullshit, because it ain't going to fly in the biggest company in the world. It's just not.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Aaron Tolles in Bowling Green, Ohio. Without a doubt, one of my favorite angles Jim was ever involved in was the one with the James Gang, Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA. I was 6 or 7 at the time, and I clearly recall Jim huffing and puffing in anger, as he clearly saw who it was, or as my grandma would say, that little asshole is having a damn heart attack. From the old bait and switch with others under the mask, to them tying you up and attempting to drag you behind the pickup truck, it was just a fun angle. But it was also the point that I began respecting you and what you contributed to the wrestling business. How did the idea come about? What are your thoughts on this part of your feud with Dusty and Magnum?
Oh, well, it was obviously, along with Magnum, to make 2 of them, it was an offshoot of the Midnight Rider and stuff that Dusty had done in Florida as Booker. And it was brand new for that audience. And it was great because people loved it. Once again, you wrong the baby faces in some kind of way, and then they creatively figure out a way to get even. And that's what, and then it gives me the chance to bitch and whine. And I mean, it's not like this is Wrestling 101. Dusty didn't really have to explain it because it's obvious. Dusty and Magnum are going to come out as the James boys, and they're going to do unspeakable shit to the Midnight and Cornette to get even for what they've done to Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA. But of course, if Dusty and Magnum did this shit, like hang me from the back of a pickup truck or this heinous shit, they'd be suspended or fined. So it's these friends of theirs, the James Gang. Well, of course we know who it is. And of course Jimmy Crockett knows who it is. But he, as a babyface promoter, is able to tell me, Cornette, I can't prove it. And if you can prove it, if you can take their masks off, then we'll do something. And it just, even Dusty and Magnum are still wrestling in the NWA and on TV in some cases, which was the best part of it. They're wrestling their own matches and doing their own thing. But when the Midnight Express are around, up pops the James Gang. It's Dusty, it's Magnum. So he gets Tony Zane and somebody else to wear the outfit so Dusty and Magnum can come and stand in the back of the arena while we're beating up the fake ones. And the people are laughing at us because we got foiled again because they hate us and they want to see us made fools of. This is not rocket science. And the only thing that almost didn't work is they almost killed me, as we've told a story with the fucking, lynching from the back of the pickup truck.
It's been a while since you told that story, though. So why don't you?
How long has it been? The ending may have changed. No, the ending of my story has never changed. The James gang comes in after we've beaten up 2 job guys. And they were very nice job guys, as I remember. I can't remember who it was exactly. But here comes the James gang, and they fucking knock Bobby out of the ring and knock Dennis out of the ring and corner me and throw a hangman's noose over my neck. And Dusty's got the rope, and Magnum picks me up my big bliffin ass, and he's got me over his shoulder. And they haul me out the back, down the aisle, out the back door. Baby Doll is waiting in the pickup truck, and what they're supposed to do is, as they put me down on the ground and they jump in the back of the pickup truck with the rope, like they're tying it off and they're going to, drag me behind the pickup truck by my neck, the Midnight Express are supposed to come and in the nick of time get there and flip the rope off my head just as they screech out, right? And no, of course, we didn't fucking rehearse this because we couldn't be seen out in the back of the parking lot in broad daylight, which it was right before this, before the taping started, with Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA practicing this. So we talked about it in the locker room, and then I went out and looked at the truck. That was the sum total of fucking preparation or stuntman training. We're going to throw a fucking noose around your neck, and we're going to be holding one end in the fucking back of the truck, and when it screeches off, just make sure your boys slip the fucking rope off. And Baby Doll's the one driving. So anyway.
And she hates you.
Well, she didn't. She didn't at that time.
Oh, okay.
I think it was a couple weeks after this that I cussed her out because she laughed at me for when I thought I was getting arrested. And I was better. We've told that story recently. Anyway, so when it happens, they dump me down on the ground and they jump in the back of the truck. And just at the last, I said, because I'm looking at the back door where the Midnight Express is going to come from. And I see that door open and they're still 20 feet away. And I see that Dusty and Magnum have already jumped in the truck. It is a good thing that I got my thumbs underneath just the edge of that rope under my chin, right? Because what Dusty was going to do was jump in the back of the pickup truck. And when the Midnight was in the right place, he was going to slap the back window. And that was Baby Doll's cue to take off. Well, 2 things. When he jumped in the back of the pickup truck and he landed, his hand landed enough to make some type of noise. And secondly, I don't know if Baby Doll, it was a stick shift, something or other, but the truck, when she popped it into gear some kind of way, it lurched like 20 fucking feet forward in the twinkling of an eye. So that's why they freeze framed it. Not only because it was gruesome and nearly showed a man being beheaded and people thought, oh, it's even worse than what we thought it would be, but also because you could see that I got the rope off me before the Midnight got there because that fucking truck took off. The Midnight Express was still 10 feet away. If I hadn't put my thumbs under there, I would be speaking in a whole nother tone of voice to you right now from an artificial neck.
What did Dusty say afterwards?
Good job, kid. Good job, kid. Boy, that was beautiful, baby. Beautiful, baby. I had Baby Doll. I don't think you know how to drive a stick.
Well, it's nice that he told you after the fact.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. In all honesty, I had never seen a rehearsal of anything in a ring outside of wrestling school, in an actual arena, whether fans were in the building or not, whether it's just building personnel. But I don't know that I ever saw an actual rehearsal of something until the WWF in the mid-90s. And it was unheard of. And there's still guys to this day. Like, I think it was Stan Lane, as a matter of fact. At the Crockett Cup, he looked at the ring, and some of the guys were in the ring. He said, are they going over a match? It's like it blows his mind that such a thing could happen. So, it's just different perspectives.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Ulysses. I'm originally from Albany, Georgia, and my dad used to take me to wrestling whenever it was in town. Was Albany a good town for business? Being young, I never really paid attention to the crowd.
Albany fucking sucked. Albany, Georgia. No, here's the thing, and I apologize to our fine fans that live in Albany, but here's why I say that. Because when you work the Georgia territory, Albany was in South Georgia. It's one of the longest drives. I mean, when they ran Savannah, that was a little bit longer or whatever, but it wasn't like Macon and Columbus and Marietta and Augusta even, where it was up in the north part of the state around Atlanta, and you'd be home quickly every night. And then when Crockett started running the Georgia and North Carolina offices, Albany was still a drive from Charlotte, but yet it was almost 470 miles each way from Charlotte, right? That's actually, we were coming back from Albany, Georgia to Charlotte the night that Black Bart poured the beer bottle full of piss on Buddy Landell and didn't tell him it was.
Wait, what?
It was,
what's that?
Well, hold on. Remind me here in a minute, but it was coming back from Albany that was going on. But anyway, Albany had a big, beautiful building, the Albany Civic Center. I guarantee you that this arena seats 10,000 people. It had a huge parking lot, is a big arena, and there was almost without fail nobody in this motherfucker. It didn't, Albany, compared to whatever towns we were working at the time, every time I went to Albany, it was a disappointment. It looked even worse because the building was so big. The atmosphere for the matches was just blah because of that. And you had to park out in the back parking lot just with all the fucking fans, and security was lax. So sometimes we had to go through the fucking whole dark parking lot when people did want to do us physical harm just to get to the fucking car. And then it was 4 hours back to Atlanta or whatever, and not all interstate. So no, Albany fucking sucked.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in.
Wait a minute. You wanted to hear about Black Bart and the bottle of piss?
Yes, Hangman Ricky Harris and Buddy Landell apparently had an incident. What was that?
Well, they didn't really have an incident because Buddy didn't know about this until later. We had gotten a van because we had to drive to Albany, Georgia from Charlotte, right? So it was me, and it was Bobby Eaton, and it was Dennis Condrey, and it was Buddy Landell, and it was Black Bart, and God damn it, somebody else. I'm trying to think of who it went.
Ron Bass?
No.
You said Black Bart, so I thought Ron.
Well, yeah, no, it's not when they were a team. Gosh, Buddy and Bart, and well, you know what? Maybe a referee, possibly. I don't think it was Tommy Young. Anyway, nevertheless, Black Bart. Buddy Landell used to love to pick at Black Bart and just pick at him about being a redneck or, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Just in the annoying, he's still a friend, but he's starting to get under my skin kind of way that Buddy perfected in his lifetime. But at the same time, Black Bart, after he had a couple of fucking beers after the show, was more than willing to fire back at Buddy Landell, especially when Buddy's sleepy. So Dennis Condrey was driving. Let's say Bobby Eaton is in the front seat. And then the next two seats are Buddy Landell and whoever I am losing track of. And then in the back row is me and Black Bart. And I'm behind Buddy. And as a matter of fact, Black Bart is on the bags behind me. So there's somebody else involved. So Tommy Young was there and maybe somebody else. Anyway, I'm bogging down the story. The point is, now about halfway back to Charlotte, about 1, 2 o'clock the fucking morning, Black Bart's had a few beers and he's just happy to be picking at Buddy, but Buddy wants to go to sleep, so he's getting aggravated at Bart. Quit, leave me alone, Bart. I want to go to sleep, blah, blah, blah. So, but he has stung Bart a couple of times. So as I'm sitting there trying to fucking nod off myself, Bart gives me the nudge. And he hands me this beer bottle. And the beer bottle is warm, so I know he's pissed in this beer bottle. He said, pour that on Budrow. I said, I don't want to pour that on. He goes, he's sleeping, right? Pour it on Budrow. I said, I don't want to get in the middle of this. He said, I'll handle it. All right. So I reached up and poured it. It was one of those Miller ponies, right? The little short one. It had a kind of a wide mouth. So anyway, I pour the bottle of piss on Buddy's lap and shit, and then fucking hand it back to Bart real quick and go back to my nodding off. But Buddy wakes up when he gets wet. He's like, "Hey, what the fuck?" And he looks back. He says, Jimmy, did you pour water on me?" I said, "Buddy, I did not pour water on you. I don't know what you're talking about."
Which is technically true.
Well, yes. And he asked the guy next to whatever the fuck, and he knew Bart was behind it some kind of way. And he's like, "What the fuck? Bart's just back there." So Buddy didn't realize that he had piss poured on him until he got home at 5 o'clock in the morning. When he walked in, his pet dog attacked his pants. And then he wouldn't stay on and tried to rip them off of him, as a matter of fact, the way he told it later on. Narrowly missing his penis in the process. But anyway, but that's what Albany would do to you.
And there was no comeback on Black Bart at a later time?
No, I don't know. I think Bart was still there after Buddy was gone around that point in time. So, but no, he didn't really didn't see nothing. He didn't know nothing. He couldn't say nothing.
Well, speaking of beer bottles filled with piss, we have a Jake Roberts question that was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Russell Bowman in Atlanta, Georgia. I recently found an old clip of Jim talking about Jake Roberts taking a 9-hour nap and missing his taxi to Manhattan for an episode of Shotgun Saturday Night. I can't begin to wrap my head around Jake in a backstage creative role. Please tell me you have other amusing anecdotes from working in the office with him during this time.
Well, here's the thing. It sounded funny. As I've mentioned before, nobody wanted to go to Shotgun Saturday Night at 10 o'clock in the morning except Vince McMahon, right? But if you didn't and you get the free ride in the limo and get the preferred parking and all that stuff, then it's a pain in the ass. You got to find your own way down the middle of wherever the fucking hell they were shooting that Shotgun Saturday Night. What was that? Was the one where the Mexican minis attacked me also? Was that a Webster Hall thing? You know New York geography.
I think it may have been.
Wherever the fucking hell and gone this place was, I didn't want to go myself, so I'm in the fucking limo. And Vince and Bruce is in the limo because, of course, he's going to be in the fucking limo. And I think if Vince had a trundle bed. But anyway, but Jake said, I'll get a ride. He either said a ride or a cab down later on because, I don't want to go that early. And the production meeting was not till 2 o'clock. But, of course, Vince would get there early in time to stare at his latest, idea he was in love with for 6 more weeks. So anyway, 2 o'clock production meeting comes, no Jake. 3 o'clock, no Jake. 4 o'clock, no Jake. We've told this story. He finally comes in like fucking 9:30 and we're going on live at 11 o'clock. And his story was that he called a cab and then laid down waiting on it in his room and went to sleep. And they didn't call his room when the cab got there. And so he was supposed to be in Manhattan from Stamford, which is what I know it's things take a long time up there. But that day I recall was about an hour. And he was supposed to be there at 2 o'clock. He didn't get there till past 9 o'clock because of this incident. In hindsight, obviously, because he did this, and I won't mention their names, but when he was on the creative team, I mentioned he didn't have a driver's license, so for several weeks I had to deviate from my trip to Vince's and go into Stamford and pick him up at the hotel they put everybody up at, and then get back on the highway and go to Vince's and drop him off every night, which got me in more traffic. So it was a rib on me that, Bruce assigned me that fucking task. And then finally, he got a ride to the Garden with 2 of the talents, just a couple of the wrestlers that were going through, and asked them to stop and turn left and go to the bad neighborhood in fucking Connecticut and get the thing at the place on the way to the Garden one time. So
Jesus.
So anyway, shortly after
and this is when he was saying he was clean and that he had found God and everything, for the record, right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that was after Austin 3:16 and all that stuff. But, I'm not trying to just bury Jake, but in a creative meeting with Vince, where it was the three of us or the four of us with, was it Bruce or Russo at that time? I think it was Bruce. It was Bruce. Anyway, talking about fucking wrestling, that was fine because he's a genius at wrestling. But at the time, in the place that he was at with his personal life, I'm sorry, but if I would never have admitted or been a 40-something-year-old man or however old we all were at the time in a wrestling business without a driver's license that had to have people carting me around. But anyway.
You have a sense of personal responsibility, something that's missed Jake all these years. You don't blame everything on everyone else.
I try, but sometimes. But anyway, and by the way, Bruce, going back to the independent contractor employee thing, there was the time where J.J. Dillon quit and left the WWF and took a job in WCW, and that story's been told before, including in his book, and it was very fascinating. But Bruce then was named the fucking head of talent relations, like vice president of talent relations or whatever, I guess was the title. Because they used to be big on titles. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and what a disaster that was.
Well, no, but I'm telling a story here. You don't even know where I'm going. But they were big on titles. I remember they sent out a fucking email or whatever, which I hardly ever used. I think I got on the big clunky computer in my office and read the emails if I came in the morning, and then I just went home and typed shit on my typewriter. But in those days. Anyway, if they would give you a promotion, you'd go from assistant vice president to vice president. There wouldn't be any more money, but you'd get a different title, and they'd stop you in the halls and fucking congratulate you, right? And the first time it happened to me was the thing where when they made Bruce the vice president of talent relations, then he came in one day into my little office where I would sit there and talk on the phone to the job guys and the outlaw promoters all day. He came in with a stack of papers. He said, "You need to start filling these out." I said, "What's this?" He's call logs. What? Every time you get on the phone with somebody, then you need to fill out the time of the call, the duration of the call, who the call was to, and the approximate subject and topics the call was about. I said, "You got to be out of your mind." He said, "Oh, no, they want these." I said, "Bruce, if I'm on the phone all day with various job guy wrestlers, extras, people wanting booked, guys in the business, and we're bullshitting and talking about fucking what's going on, because that's things that I need to know to call these guys and to talk about these guys or to use these guys. And same thing with these independent promoters. I'm not going to have all these calls and then sit down and write a sheet out on every single one with how long I talked to fucking Jimmy Kettner in fucking goddamn Delaware about his fucking upcoming tournament and what kind of talent he's got that's looking good these days and anybody I should use for TV in fucking Wilmington. And then every single time I'm not going to do that." He said, "Well, we need them. We need them." So I took them and put them in the bottom of the fucking drawer of the desk I had, which was empty because I never had anything in my desk there. They still may be there. I never filled out a fucking call log. But so then when finally they made JR the head of talent relations, they didn't change Bruce's title. They just upped everybody. JR became executive vice president of talent relations. And then Bruce was vice president of talent relations. And somehow they made me new cards that said, I think instead of talent liaison, I was assistant talent relay. I don't fucking know. Right. And people would congratulate you because they'd send out an email. So-and-so has a new title. And you go to the fucking lunchroom. Oh, congratulations. I didn't get a fucking penny more money. They just call me something different. The titles in the fucking wrestling business were ludicrous anyway. So
I'm going to guess that the people who weren't on the wrestling side of the WWE, the people who were actual executives, when they got their promotions, they got raises.
Well, probably, yes. But actually, sometimes not at like the fucking assistant marketing guy becomes the deputy assistant marketing guy or whatever. No,
I said executives.
Well, yeah. Well, back then, maybe not at that point. 1996, Vince, he took the water coolers out of the fucking office in 95. I didn't know all this when I came up. Bruce was like, "Oh, things are great. We're all great." I didn't find out till after JJ left and all that other stuff that they'd cut all the office people's salaries like 40% the year before I came in and all this other shit.
You know, he could probably pay for everyone's insurance with just 1/4's dividend, that excessive dividend that he takes, which is ridiculous. Just one of those could cover everyone's health insurance and he'd be a hero. But
no, what would 1% of the new television deal be? Has anybody worked that out?
I don't know.
I bet you that 1% of the new television deal would pay for health insurance for every wrestler in the WWE. Somebody do the math, figure this thing out, get back with us, and we will credit you.
Yes, and do it quickly before Vince forgets everything once again. But our next question, Jim, was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Scotty Jocks. I am a lifelong resident, 40 years, of Paragould, Arkansas.
Paragould,
Arkansas.
Paragould, Arkansas.
I would love to hear your stories about why Paragould can blow you.
It would. I think Randy Hales went on to defend Paragould. I think it is Paragould, actually. I don't know. It depends on which side of the river you're from. But Randy Hales, I think, defended it because it was one of his old towns. But the building was just bleh. And I believe that's where Frazier knocked himself out. I think that's what we were talking about, and got stuck in the goddamn hallway there trying to go under the bleachers to the locker room. And it was way, way far out there from, I'm from Louisville, right? I'm from the Louisville end. So I'm as far away from home in the Memphis territory as I could be when I was in Paragould, Arkansas. So it just didn't appeal to me at the time, but I was happy to be anywhere.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in on Twitter from Justin Reifsteck to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. I would love to give you a list of guys and have you tell us if he had it and could have been a world champion, or if they were just a dreaded good hand. Billy Gunn.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Hold on here. A world champion where? In what organization? See, the standards are different. Or is he talking about, are these all WWF guys? Or?
No, they're not. There's only a few names here. Let's see if you can get with this.
Okay.
Billy Gunn, did he have it to be a world champion, or was he just a good hand?
I don't know that I ever saw Billy as the WWF world champion, but he was certainly a better in-ring performer and looked better than some world champions in some places I've seen.
Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, he could have been a champion anywhere. Because he was real, but he knew how to work. Because, there are still people that think that Shamrock just jumped from the UFC and became a pro wrestler instantly and don't realize he trained to do pro wrestling first.
For South Atlantic Pro Wrestling for Robert Fuller as the booker.
Vince Torelli. Look him up, folks. But he had every tool for both businesses from the start. So, yes, he could have been a world champion anywhere. D'Lo Brown. Once again... And I don't think D'Lo would be upset at me saying this. I don't know that I ever saw D'Lo Brown as the WWF world champion, but once again, he could fucking go, and in some other places, yes, definitely.
Val Venus.
Same answer. Boy, Val had the body. Val could work. Val could talk. I hated the fucking gimmick. That was Russo's bullshit.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, he obviously got signed. He was Sean Morley. He got that gimmick. If he hadn't been given that gimmick, if he had just been brought in and made a heel in some way or fashion, does that change the way you would have perceived him?
Probably, yes. Because if you think about Sean Morley that could have come in and been a heel to his best ability and then probably switched babyface later on because he would have got over so good as a heel, then you would have had something. But, Val Venus, no, that's another case of... limiting a guy for his entire career because you want a funny gimmick now.
Arn Anderson.
Yeah. But once again, I don't see him as WWF world champion because he for only a brief period of time wrestled in the WWF. He could have been an NWA world champion.
That's interesting. You think Arn Anderson would have been an okay touring NWA champion?
I think he could have. Not by 1987 when there was no such a thing, but if you put 1987, 88, 89, 90 Arn Anderson in the 1970s, he could have done that.
What about beautiful Bobby Eaton?
No. Because Bobby would have never wanted to. I mean, you saw him on a Crockett Cup promo. He's standing next to two of his best friends being cheered, and he still looked like he was having a fucking root canal and a colonoscopy at the same time. Bobby didn't want to talk. Speaking on television was not his thing. That would have been too big a part of it. Work-wise, obviously, he could have done anything.
Two more names. Hardcore Holly.
Oh, once again, Sparky Plug, definitely not, but no, Bob Holly. I don't see as the WWF world champion. In some other places, his work would have carried him to do, to be the top guy, but I don't know that I see that.
And finally, Shelton Benjamin.
Ooh. Unfortunately, a little bit of the Bob Eatonitis, because Shelton is so funny in person, but he gets tongue tripped when he's on television sometimes. So he could do anything athletically, but he couldn't cut the promo of the world champion, the guy, the single main eventer.
All right. Our final question this week, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Matt James. Whenever I used to watch Nick Patrick referee, I always thought he looked enormous, often towering over the wrestlers whose matches he was officiating. I always thought the smaller, shorter referees helped make the wrestlers look bigger and stronger. They also tended to bump better, too. What's Jim's view on this, and what did he look for when booking referees?
Well, with Nick, he started as a wrestler because obviously he was Jody Hamilton, the assassin's son, and he was training to be a wrestler and was already being used locally in Georgia in the mid-'80s, and I think he just destroyed his knee.
Yeah.
With something, I can't remember what it was. And so he started refereeing, and by the time that TBS acquired Crockett Promotions and Jody went to work for them, and Nick was a qualified and a experienced referee, so they just started using him, and he was good at it. He was big for a referee, but he was one of the better referees we had. So that, you trade that off. But with referees, I never honestly looked for size first or made it a main priority, but it just seemed like that most of the great referees that came to me, I wanted to give Brian Hildebrand a spot in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I was going to be the heel manager, and I couldn't afford to pay him to be the secondary heel manager, which is what he would have always loved to have done. But I asked him if he wanted to be a referee, and he'd had experience doing it. He said yes. And then he got a chance because Tommy Young was my agent for the first year or so. So he got a chance to get coached by Tommy. And then later on, Tommy actually said, Corny, you don't need me anymore because Hildebrand's not only a good referee, but he's carrying the finish as well. So, but Brian was smaller. And then Daryl Morris that we found in Knoxville was a smaller guy also and refereed a lot for us. And it did, Ronnie West was a smaller guy. Tommy Young is the same height as everybody, but he was a thinner framed person. So he looked official without looking physically, imposing. Chris Sharp, of the last, 10 years or so that I've worked with at OVW, and he did some Ring of Honor stuff for us. Chris Sharp is a tremendous referee, and he's shorter and smaller, and it does add to it, but it doesn't necessarily have to disqualify a guy if he's as big as the boys of being a referee, but there is a lot to be said about the visuals.
In going over all the Mid-South shows from 82 on the Mid-South Wrestling Television Review Show I do with Mike Mills, I was kind of shocked how many really impressive but too frequent bumps Alfred Neely took to the floor. What can you tell me about Alfred Neely?
I never got to meet him, but I'm the same as you. When I would watch those Mid-South TVs, Randy Hales was sending me Mid-South TV in like 82 because since he lived in Jonesboro, he could get it off of Little Rock TV, right? So fucking Alfred Neely, you could look sideways at him and he would fly backwards through the ropes head first. I mean, what bumps for a fucking referee? But the problem was, and I that may be why I never met Alfred Neely. He was gone by the time I got there. As Watts told me one time, as a fucking great bump. You've taken it 3 times now. When you do something that looks so that catches so much attention, but it catches your attention, the fact that it kind of looks the same way every time you do it, or you're doing the same flavor of things. It might be time to do some different shit. But he was a bumping fucking fool, was Alfred. And what a great hick name for a fucking wrestling referee in Arkansas and Mississippi. There's Alfred Neely. He should have been on fucking Green Acres with Ebb the farmhand.
Did you work with Jerry Usher or Jack Howe ever?
I did not.
So when you went to Mid-South, it was Ronnie West and Randy Anderson? And Carl Fergie?
No. First of all, one of the referees was Rick Ferrara.
That's right, Rick Ferrara.
Ricky Ferrara, who had a gym in Alexandria by that point, but had been a wrestler and had worked as Pierre Bonnet because he was French. Ricky Ferrara was one referee. He was just finishing up the first month or so we got there. Ronnie West was not there at that point. Ronnie West came in, I believe, more toward warm weather, spring or summer in '84. Carl Fergie is one. Actually, we always forget about poor cousin Carl, but he was one of the guys in the talent trade. He needed a spot, and Dundee asked him, "You want a referee?" And Carl Fergie's another guy. He was the size of the wrestlers, but he was a good referee. He actually made more money refereeing for Bill Watts than he did wrestling in the Memphis territory. But he started about a month there. And then Pee Wee was there. So it was Pee Wee and Ricky Ferrara, and then they moved Fergie in. And I'm pretty sure there was probably another guy hanging around for just a short period of time or fill in something or whatever. But I can't remember. If I heard another guy's name, I would know it. But Pee Wee was friends with Dog. Yeah. And had come over to visit Dog, and he was so classically small, but he could bump and shit, so he looked great as a referee. So they made Pee Wee Anderson a referee.
Well, with that, the drive-thru has closed.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
Of course, you could hear more of the drive-thru on YouTube.
That was the wimpiest bell ringing I've ever heard in my life.
It's a wimpy bell. There's nothing I could do. This is me. See, if I swing it harder, it doesn't even do anything. It's fucking... I quit. No! You can hear more of the drive-thru next week right here, wherever it is that you download it. But of course, YouTube for complete episodes of the drive-thru. tinyurl.com/official corny YouTube. Also full episodes of the experience and more content coming very, very soon to that channel. And of course, classic clips from the drive-thru, the experience, and even the bonus drive-thru available on the Arcadian Vanguard video page, tinyurl.com/corny YouTube. You can go there and check it out, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette and see all the official Jim Cornette videos. Of course, you can listen to the experience when it debuts on Thursday or anytime, wherever you find your favorite podcast. And thank you so much for not just the drive-thru, for the experience as well. All the many, many new listeners. We hope you enjoy the programs, and maybe go through some of the classic clips to make sure your question was asked or not asked before you send one in. That may be a good suggestion.
Yeah, do some homework. If you've just joined us, you need to do your part in keeping yourself up to date.
You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast, and you can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your very favorite podcasts. Of course, we want to remind you to visit Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. You guys know about all the usual stuff, the t-shirts, the DVDs, the burger towels, the restraining orders, and so much more. But of course, the brand new Midnight Express 35th Anniversary Limited Edition set. Anything you want to say about that here at the end of the show, Jim?
Yes, buy a lot of them. No, no, actually, here's the thing. I know it's a high-priced item. There's only 50 in the world, and we don't care how fast they sell, because they will eventually, because of our fine fans. And we wanted to make sure that these went into only the proper hands.
Once again, JimCornette.com, Cornette's Collectibles. If you're listening to this on Monday and you want to get that set, go right now. It is on sale as you're listening to this. But until next time on the drive-thru, and until Thursday on the experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!